Hello all, in this video I will be teaching you how to write your first C program to print hello world on the screen. So before starting, I would recommend you to go and watch my earlier videos on YouTube on the topics compilation stages of a C program and comment lines in C. Because once you watch these videos, then you would find the current lesson easier to understand, right? So the links for the videos are given in the description below this video. So I would highly recommend you to go watch these videos and then come back to this video and watch this lesson, right? So if you have already watched these videos, then let's get started. Right now, the code that you can actually see on the screen is a very simple C source code to print hello world on the screen. So though it is a very simple C program, right, we have a lot of things to learn from this program, my dear friends. Okay, so what I would do is that I will start dissecting the source code line by line by line, and I will explain you the meaning of each and every line so that you understand the concepts better, right? So let's get started. The first line is called as a comment line. The first line is called as a comment line, right? So in C source code, any line that starts with a forward slash, star mark and ends with a star mark and a forward slash is basically called as a comment line, right? And the whole and sole purpose of comment lines is for documentation purpose only. Right? So when I talk about documentation, if suppose you wish to inform the reader of the C source code about the author of this code, the date and time when this code was written, or even the logic behind this code, then the best place to put all this information is as part of your comment lines, right? So therefore comment lines are only used for documentation purpose. Comment lines are used by programmers or human beings to read and understand what is happening in this piece of code. So this is one thing about the comment lines, right? So the second thing about comment lines is that comment lines are never part of your executable, okay? Or your compiler during your compilation process will never convert these comment lines into any sort of assembly instructions. Or in simple words, comment lines are not compiled by your compiler, right? It is simply ignored by your compiler, okay? Because comment lines are used only for human beings to understand what is happening in this piece of code, and comment lines are only used for documentation purpose, right? So comment lines are used for improving the readability of your code through documentation. That is the whole and sole purpose of comment lines, right? So more about comment lines I have discussed in this video, okay? So that is the reason I recommended you to go and watch this video, right? Now coming to the second line, okay? The second line is called as preprocessor directive. It is called as preprocessor directive, right? Now what do you mean by preprocessor directive, right? So this line, okay, this line which is called as a preprocessor directive, okay, must be evaluated by a tool called as preprocessor during the compilation stage, right? Now let me explain what do you mean by compilation very quickly. Compilation is a process of converting English like looking high level source code into CPU understandable binary code, right? And the tool that will actually perform this conversion from source code to low level code is called as a compiler. So for the compiler to convert from a source code to binary code, it takes 4 stages, right? The first stage is called as pre-processing, the second stage is called as actual compilation, the third stage is called as assembling, and the fourth stage is called as linking, right? Now this line that starts with hash symbol, okay, will be evaluated by the preprocessor during the pre-processing stage. That is the first stage of your compilation process, right? So the meaning of hash include stdio.h is that, right? So it is indicating the preprocessor to go in search of a file which is given as part of your angle brackets, right? So this line is indicating the preprocessor to go in search of this line which is given as part of your angle brackets to certain standard locations where all your standard header files are kept, right? So once it goes to those locations where all your standard header files are kept, right, the preprocessor has to search for this file called as stdio.h, Once it finds this file stdio.h, it has to open that file, read the contents of this file, then come back to this source code and remove this line hash include stdio.h from here, and in place of this line it has to, okay, the preprocessor has to replace the contents it read from this file stdio.h, and this source code will become expanded source code, right? Now so to just brief you up once again, preprocessor is a tool that will evaluate, okay, any line that starts with a symbol hash. It means in your source code, if you have any line that starts with a symbol hash, it means that that line has to be evaluated by the preprocessor. Okay. Now, so in our program, there is only one line that starts with hash, isn't it? And that line is hash include stdio.h, right? So the moment the preprocessor sees this line hash include stdio.h, right? So the preprocessor will understand the fact that this line has to be evaluated by the preprocessor itself. Right. So because our line happens to be hash include stdio.h, so the duty of preprocessor is to go in search of this file stdio.h to a standard location where all your standard header files are kept. So among all those standard header files, it has to look for this stdio.h header file, okay, and then read its contents, come back, remove this line from here, and in place of this line the preprocessor has to replace the entire contents that it read from stdio.h, and this program will become, or this source code will become, expanded source code. Right? Now what do you mean by stdio.h? Stdio.h is nothing but a file called as a header file, isn't it? It is called as a header file, right? Now you might ask me this question, right? Preprocessor, okay, read the contents of this file and replaced it in this source code, right? Then what was present in stdio.h, right? So what does header file actually contain, right? So header file will contain two important things. First one is called as a macros. It contains some standard macros, and also it contains function prototypes of some standard functions, built-in functions, function prototypes. Okay, so any header file, not just stdio.h, any header file for that matter will contain two important information. One is some standard macros, and other one is function prototypes for some standard functions, built-in functions like printf, scanf, malloc, calloc, realloc, getch, getche, and so on and so forth, right? So now you might ask me, what will happen if suppose I do not put this line hash include stdio.h, right? So when you don't put this hash include stdio.h over here, then the compiler may compile your program with a warning, indicate that there is something wrong happening, my dear friends, right? It might compile, but it might compile with a warning, right? Because the prototypes for printf and scanf or any other functions are present in header files, right? So in our program, in this program, I have used the function called as printf. Okay, there is a function called as printf, and the standard function prototype for this function is present in this header file stdio.h, and that is the reason I included this in my program via this line hash include stdio.h, which is also called as preprocessor directive. Now let me show that practically to you. Okay, I will show you what will happen if I do not put hash include stdio.h in this program, and let me see what the compiler will, what kind of warning will compiler issue to us. Okay, so I have a program. Okay, when you see I have a source code which says my first program.c. This is my program. Okay, so when I open this code, I can see the complete source code over here. Okay, now let me remove this line from here. Can you see this line hash include stdio.h? So I am removing this line from the source code. Okay, I am deleting it. Now let me compile this using the compiler cc my first program.c, enter. So when I actually compile this, the compiler gives me a warning saying that implicitly declaring library function printf with type and so, right? So basically it gives us a note also in saying that include the header stdio.h or explicitly provide a declaration for the printf. Okay, so function prototypes are also called as function declarations, my dear friends, right? So this compiler is telling me to add stdio.h because stdio.h is a standard header file that contains a function prototype, okay, for printf, right? So that is the reason I am including this header file in my program hash include stdio.h. So stdio.h is a header file, and if I wish to include stdio.h in my program, I will have to tell that via this line, okay, called as preprocessor directive, saying hash include within angle brackets stdio.h. This is the line. So hope you understood the purpose of this line. Okay, now let us move to the next line. Okay, the next line is called as main function. It is called as the main function. I know that you might be asking me, what do you mean by function prototypes, what do you mean by function, and so on and so forth. So my dear friends, have no worries, absolutely don't have any kind of worries, because I cannot explain function prototypes in this current lesson, because it is beyond the scope of the current video to explain about function and function prototypes. But please don't worry, I am going to make a separate video only on the topic functions. So there I would clearly explain what do you mean by function, function prototypes, what do you mean by function definition, function calls, and so on and so forth. Okay, so our intention of this program is just to introduce you to the world of C language, and I'll show you how to compile and run our C program to print hello world. Okay, but I'm only giving you some necessary details. So slowly over over the next videos you will be able to understand clearly what do you mean by functions and all that. Okay, so please don't have any kind of worries for now, right? So having said that, so we have something called as main function over here. Okay, so main function is basically the entry point into your C program, right? So if you have a C program that will have 1,000 lines of code, assume 1,000 lines of code, and your CPU has to start somewhere, isn't it? Now if your C program has to be executed by the CPU has to start somewhere, right? And that starting point is called as your main function, my dear friends. Okay, it is like this: int main. Okay, int main, open the bracket, close the bracket. Okay, we basically call it as parenthesis. Okay, open the brace and close brace, right? So when you put an open brace and close brace, it will indicate a block. Okay, so that you can group a set of statements within this piece of block, right? So this entire thing is basically called as a function. So I would be explaining function in detail in a later video, so don't worry. So for now you got to understand that main function is the entry point into your program, right? So if your CPU wants to start executing each and every line, then this would be your starting point. Okay, so main function would be your starting point, right? Now there is something called as int over here, right? What is this int? Int is basically called as your return type. Okay, it is this place is called as your return type, and the type of return type is int. Okay, and int is also your data type. So more about return types and data types I would be explaining in a further video. Okay, because it's now I will not be able to explain you what do you mean by a return type and what do you mean by data type in the current video. Okay, but for now just understand that, okay, it is always int main, right? I have seen few books, okay, which says void main. Writing void main is absolutely wrong. You're not supposed to write void main. Okay, it has to always be int main and not void main, my dear friends, right? Okay, now you might ask me, why should I write int main? Okay, let me try to give you an answer for that, right? So the meaning of writing int main is that, okay, it indicates, or main is the only function in a C program that has to definitely return on value, indicating whether the program terminated successfully or not, right? So 0 indicates the program's terminated successfully, and any non-zero value indicates that the program terminated unsuccessfully, right? So because main function of your C program has to definitely return a value, right? No matter what, it has to return a value, and that is the reason you have to write int main only. So writing void main is absolutely wrong. You have to write int main, right? Now let me show that to you. Okay, what could happen if I write void main instead of int main? Let me show that to you practically, right? So let me open my code. Okay, so now as you can see, I have int main over here. So if I remove this int main and write void main, okay, and if I actually delete this line, let me even delete this line. Okay, so I have written void main. Let me see what the compiler tells me. cc my first program.c. Okay, so when I compile this program, can you see a warning which appears over here? So because, my dear friends, personally I don't like having any warning in my C source code. Okay, the reason is that warning indicates danger, and it is it is not really suggested for you to compile any C program or any program for that matter with warnings. Okay, so as much as possible try to remove warnings from your code, right? So as you can see here, when I wrote void main, it says return type of main is not int. It means it is mandatory that main function has to return an integer value itself. So the note is that change return type to integer. Did you notice it? So basically it cannot be void main, it has to be int main itself. Okay, the reason is that main function must definitely return a value indicating whether, okay, the program terminated successfully or not. Is that okay, my dear friends? So therefore it is int main and not void main. So having said that, main function is the entry point into your program. Now after this we have another, we have a statement called as printf. So basically this line is called as a printf function call. This is called as your function call, right? So printf is a standard library function which is used to print certain characters on the screen. It is used to output certain, characters on the screen. So in my example over here in this program, right, so we have a function called as printf. Okay, it says printf print formatted data. F stands for formatted data, and you will have a set of characters between double quotes. Okay, it's basically technically called as a string. So let me not get into string for now. I would be explaining strings in a separate video, in a separate chapter, in a separate lesson. So for now, okay, so printf will print everything that it sees, okay, between a pair of double quotes, right? So in our example we have something called as hello world terminated with an escape sequence. In this program, when you say /n, it is basically called as an escape sequence which is used to bring your cursor to the new line. Okay, so printf is a standard library function which is used to print certain characters on the screen, okay, which are between a pair of double quotes, right? So that is what is happening over here. So I have written a printf, and printf is used to print hello world on the screen, and this new /n is called as an escape sequence which will bring your cursor to the new line. Okay, so let me show you what will happen, okay, by writing a new line and without writing a new line character. So you can see that we have a program called as my first program.c, and it says printf hello world. So I would remove this escape sequence called as new line from here, okay, and I will compile and run my code. Okay, cc my first program.c, I compiled it, and when I run this by saying ./a.out is the executable file that I got after compiling the program. So when I run this, as you can see, hello world is printed, okay, but I did not get my shell back on the next line. So if I want my cursor to be on the next line, did you see this? The cursor is on the same line, right? If I want the cursor on the next line, then I would actually, okay, I would actually put this escape sequence called as new line character. I'm putting this escape sequence, okay, and then I will compile my program once again, and when I run this code, okay, you can see the difference in output. Okay, so earlier it was on the same line, okay, the cursor was on the same line, whereas now the cursor has come to the next line. This is the use of having your escape sequence called as new line character within your strings, right? So basically printf is a standard library function which is used to print certain characters on the screen, and the goal of this program was to print hello world on the screen, and we have achieved it using the function printf. Okay, so for the printf to work very nicely, okay, or without a warning, then we will have to include its function prototype which is present in the header file stdio.h, and if I want to include stdio.h, then I will have to tell the preprocessor to include it via the statement #include stdio.h line, which is nothing but the preprocessor directive. Okay, and then this return 0 is the last statement which indicates that, okay, this program has terminated successfully. The moment I come to the end of this main function, it obviously means that the program has executed every set of statements, and if it returns 0, it indicates that the program terminated successfully to the operating system. Okay, so main function is the only function in C language which has to definitely return an termination status to the operating system, indicating whether it got successfully terminated or unsuccessfully terminated, right? So 0 indicates successful termination, and any non-zero value indicates unsuccessful termination, right? So then we close the block. Also, it is very important to note that in C program, each and every statement has to be terminated with a semicolon, right? So semicolon is used to indicate that it's an end of a statement, right? So this completes my first C program to print hello world on the screen. Okay, so you can try this out. Okay, so before winding up the session, so let me just show you how to check the error status or check the execution status of this program. Right now, let me open my terminal once again. Okay, so we have this program, my first program.c, right, and I am compiling this program, my first program.c. I compiled it. Now let me run this code. okay, my code successfully executed. Now if I want to see whether it got successfully executed, I would say echo dollar, okay, echo dollar question mark, and you can see a return value of 0 over here, my dear friends. Okay, if suppose I had any kind of trouble executing my program, say for example, let me try to bring in some kind of trouble in my program by writing, say by writing int a is equal to 5, int b is equal to 6. Don't worry about this code, I just want to try to terminate this code unsuccessfully, right? So int c is equal to a divided by b, okay, instead of 6 let me make it 0, okay, and then let me say printf percentage dc. Don't worry about what is happening in this code, but I'm just trying to crash this code, right? So I'm trying to do a divide by 0, okay, and now when I actually compile this code and then run my code, okay, so you can see there is an exception. This is called as a runtime error, so don't worry about what it is, but let me now try to see the status, okay, execution status dollar question mark. Did you see this, guys? Okay, so because this program terminated unsuccessfully, there was a non-zero value that was returned to the operating system, whereas in the first case when I executed successfully, it printed hello world and zero status was sent to the operating system. Whereas here in this program I purposefully made a error, I mean I purposefully terminated my program unsuccessfully by doing a divide by 0. It there was a runtime error that happened, and the value that was sent to the operating system was a non-zero value, which indicates that there was a problem with the code, right? It means that the program did not terminate successfully, rather it terminated unsuccessfully. That is the meaning of writing return 0 over here, my dear friends, right? So hope you learned something new in this video. Okay, so if you really like the video, okay, if you really watch this lesson, okay, so and if you have any doubts, please don't forget to actually post your doubts in the comment section below. I would try my best to answer all your doubts, okay. And if you really enjoyed this video, please don't forget to click on the subscribe button, okay, and also click on the bell icon, okay. So having said this, I will meet you in the next video with lot of concepts. Until then, take care, bye bye, see you.